The manhwa starts inside of a fitness center in Seoul. Inside one of the staff room, we see a man named Choi Kang-hyuk live streaming. He goes by Best Gym Rat TV. Kang says he's going to do a mukbang today, then starts to pig out. He says it's good, then takes a sip of his beer. I'm sure you can tell from his body that he enjoys working out. He wasn't always a gym rat, but he was heavily injured in a deployment during a special forces mission, and he started doing physical therapy but fell in love with trying to figure out what was optimal for the body. He ended up becoming a Chad personal trainer and focused on rehabilitation. For those who are wondering why he's doing a mukbang, it's because of COVID. In order to keep up with the cost of the gym's maintenance, he ended up trying streaming, although the profits weren't good enough to maintain all 5 gym locations. He does his outro to all of them, saying to like and subscribe. He instantly sighs after he ends the stream. He says he's worried about tomorrow. He ate so many calories and he wants to work out, but it'll be hard because of the alcohol. He starts to wonder how things got like this. It jumps to a doctor telling him that he's balding due to a high amount of stress, which hurts him. The doctor says if he doesn't de-stress, his body will continue to break down. Kang asks what he means, and the doctor says he'll become bald. Kang doesn't want to turn into a Korean Johnny Sins, so that's why he's resting so much too. He says he doesn't know what to do. He starts to scroll on his phone and says, "Not this one." We see that he's looking at Murim novels. He grew up with his grandparents, and he would often go to the nearby bookstore and read them. He spots a familiar work from an author named Gaejiang, and that there's a new one about a Shaolin monk. He says this is unique, and the synopsis is that Mujin, the protagonist, martial artist. He clicks on it to start reading and instantly finds himself hooked. He says he really feels relaxed, and then he starts to wonder when the last time he relaxed like this was, saying it's like he was back to being a kid. He falls over saying that he's sleepy, and while he's laying there, his phone screen begins to light up. Then he hears someone trying to wake up Mujin for the morning workout. Kang raises up and looks up to see a bald head and a Shaolin in uniform as a little boy says they need to hurry up or else they'll be yelled at. Kang asks the kid how he got into his house and the kid asks what he means, saying he's older and bigger than him. Kang is 180 centimeters and 8% body fat, so he's confused. He asks the kid if his eyes are okay and looks around wondering why he's in his house, but he quickly realizes that he is not in his house and he's confused. Then he touches his head to see he's bald. He stands up wondering where the hell he is and why he's bald. Then he remembers the kid called him Mujin, and says it's the same as the novel he was reading. He wonders why he's here and why he had to lose his muscles. He quickly says it must be a dream. The kid says they'll really be late, and Kang, we'll call him Mujin from now on, stands up and says he's an adorable kid. They start to run off and he says he'll enjoy the situation since it's a dream. An older man yells, saying being late first thing in the day they need to be taught a lesson. He tells Mujin and the kid to take their places. Mujin says it feels so real for a dream. The man says they'll start with the horse stance first, and Mujin looks around to see everyone shaking like after a bad batch of Taco Bell. But he says they'll hurt their knees like this. Do proper exercises due to the rehabilitation training, so he understands how important the lower body and core are to bodily health. There were times he saw trainers teaching the wrong technique and that they would focus on the upper body and ignore the core, so he can tell their posture will lead to issues in the future. Their backs are too rounded and their legs are too spread. The man yells, saying the lower body is the foundation of martial arts. He says if they aren't able to maintain balance with their lower bodies, they can't properly put any strength into punching or their staff techniques. Mujin says if he knows all of this, why is he letting them have such poor posture? He grits his teeth since it's a dream. He won't stand by. He yells, saying they don't know a single thing about proper exercise. The older men and all of the other students look in disbelief. The kid from earlier asks him what's wrong, then the older man asks why he's interrupting a training session with yelling. Some of the other older men too ask if he's doing this so he doesn't have to train, saying it's not befitting of a Shaolin disciple. Mujin says he wonders if it's because it's a martial arts novel, but he can feel their energy just from them shouting. Even so, he doesn't plan to back down, saying he just pointed out it was flawed and that it's way easier than having to deal with dumb members in real life. The man asks him if he's saying that the Shaolin training is wrong. Mujin says this dream is hell realistic, and he'll play along by speaking like a martial artist. He tells the man, That if they keep training like they are, when they get older, the cartilage in their knees will be damaged. The man says it's an excuse made by the weak. Mujin asks what he means, saying that martial arts is for the weak to train their bodies and mind, but now he's saying it's not something for the weak to learn. Another man steps up, saying the way the Shaolin trains is different from what he said. They train in martial arts to achieve enlightenment. Mujin says he sees and asks if they are saying the Shaolin isn't a place where the weak can obtain enlightenment. The man quickly stammers, saying no, they train harshly to train their minds. The mind is weak, so they seek comfort in times of difficulty and evil, and the training is to make it easy to endure through this. Mujin says he guesses their minds only need to be trained while they are young is practically what they are saying to him, since what he's saying is that in order to train their minds, it's fine to damage their knees when they are young, since once they are old, they won't need to go through times like that. The other students start to chatter, wondering if this is all true. Then Mujin points at a much older man, saying he wonders how much he's gone through to still not have obtained enlightenment. The dude wonders why the hell this kid is so crazy to say that to the first class disciple Hai Yung. Then Hai Yung shouts and causes the students to cover their ears. Mujin says that's a lot of pressure. All of the students look towards Hai Yung, and he begins to walk to Mujin, saying he's heard everything he said and like what the second-class disciple said, the martial arts of a Buddhist group is usually to train oneself. However, their martial arts are different. Mujin asks how Hai Yung says their martial arts are used to rescue the masses. They use them to protect others from evil and the demons that harass them. Mujin sighs, asking if they are just damaging their knees to protect others. Hai Yung stares at him, saying if they leave him be, he'll be a bad influence on the other students, but that the grown-ups cannot punish a young monk personally, so there's one option left. He tells Mujin to prove it himself. He points forward, saying he wants him to win against those who learn from the Shaolin training method to prove his point. Mujin asks who he'll be fighting, saying surely not a first-class disciple. Hai Yung says it would only be fair if he fought someone who joined at the same time and gets Mugung to step forward. Hai Yung says if what he said is true, in 7 days from now, he will spar with Mugung to prove himself. Mujin says the guy is in a different weight class, saying this is just a mockery of it being called fair, and mockingly says that he's an honorable senior. He agrees to the conditions, saying he'll do that, as there's no way he'd lose to a kid. They'll see in 1 week. For now, Hai Yung says he's clearly taking the hard path. Amipa, it's a Buddhist saying. He tells the rest to get back to training. The kid from earlier asks Mujin why he's doing this, saying to just apologize. We finally learn the kid's name is Muyo. The other students stare at Mujin with annoyed looks, calling him impudent. Hai Yung says he'll see him in a week. Mujin starts to sweat while performing squats instead of doing the horse stance. A second-class disciple asked him why he was doing it, but he told him Hai Yung allowed him to. Hai Yung tells the man to leave him alone too. He smiles and continues squatting while telling the rest their knees are going to hurt a lot in the future. He says they are so young, asking who will take responsibility if their knees are damaged. Hai Yung gets annoyed but tries his best to remain calm and ignore the talking. Mujin trained for 2 hours, so now it's time to go munch on some protein. But he doesn't understand the issue he's about to face. He looks down at his food, asking if this is everything they are eating, as Shaolin monks are all vegetarians. While it's natural to be a vegetarian at the temple, he was puzzled since he didn't think about this. He wonders where the hell he'll get his protein. Then he begins to wonder why he can smell the food in his dream. He says it smells good, even though it's only vegetables. But in the end, it doesn't matter if that's all there is. He starts to shake, saying this is child abuse. They tell him not to talk but start to yap, saying this is too harsh to only provide vegetables. The second-class disciples tell him to stop talking during mealtime, saying this is disrespectful, and one of them says he'll teach him a lesson. Mujin wonders why the dude's angry since he's the one who should be pissed. They need protein. He grits his teeth, saying he won't let his training go to waste. A man opens the door and starts to laugh. Everyone looks up to see him, and the second-class disciple shouts, saying Hall Leader Hyunmun, he takes care of the food here. He looks at Mujin, says he must be hungry, and if the food isn't enough, he'll get more. Mujin says there's enough food, and Hyunmun asks if he wants more of the side dish. He decides to be generous and overlook his grumbling. Mujin then asks if he has any chicken breasts. Everyone is outraged, asking what the hell he's talking about. Muyo says he's been acting strange, asking if there's something wrong with his head. Mujin says that they need protein, they have to eat it. He looks at Muyul's eyes to see himself and starts to realize things are strange. He gets tired from exercising, he can smell the food, he begins to wonder if this is reality. He quickly says he has to do something about the situation since if he's truly a young monk in the temple, he needs to think of something appropriate to say. Now he bows his head, saying he's acted weirdly since he's hungry. He just misspoke. Hyunmun says he must have just been tired from training. Mujin then asks if he can have more beans and mushrooms. Hyunmun is speechless and says he's definitely crazy. Whether it's reality or not, Mujin knew he needed protein. It jumps to him messing with his brush in class, saying he can't believe they are studying Buddhist scriptures. He starts to think about the what if, saying even if he's in the world of the novel, how on earth will he get back home? Then he wonders if he'll get out when the story is completed. He says based on that perspective, it's not bad at all. He's the protagonist, so he has exceptional talent. The Shaolin Temple is the strongest among the Orthodox Alliance. While he's deep in thought, he spills his ink and screams. He realizes he was loud and looks up to see the other students in disdain. He says that it would seem like he's been marked by the others, but it's too late to change things. He'll just win the spar and get acknowledged. Then scene shifted to Ha-young asking Hyunmun if he's serious, and he laughs, saying he's a unique child. Ha-young apologizes on his behalf. Then Hyunmun asks what he thinks about Mujin. He says that they'll find out in 7 days if Mujin is correct or not. Hyunmun laughs, saying that's truly a great idea. They can't punish a disciple because of their thoughts, so they can just prove their point by testing it. He also says that he's heard that Mugung is one of the most competent disciples among the new disciples. The temple recruits hundreds of kids every year, but most drop out and they end up with only 10% of the original number, which is why the other disciples or elders don't generally know the names of the new monks. But Mugung was a rare case, as they all knew who he was. Ha-young says Mugung will teach him a good lesson. Then the scene shifted to both of them walking up to the middle of a platform as a week has passed since they agreed to spar. Ha-young tells both of them to get ready for the fight. It cuts back to Muyul asking Mujin what he's doing. He says that he's stretching. Muyul asks what that is, and Mujin explains it in martial arts terms, calling it tendons extension technique. Of course, we all know what stretching is in the modern world, but within the novel, it's not that well known, especially the benefits of the increased range of motion. Mujin says he should give it a try. Some other kids talk about it as Muyul starts to stretch under Mujin's guidance. Then they hear other kids talking about Mugung. Then they see him punching the air. The kids say he's incredible, and you can hear snapping sounds from his punches. Mujin says if he gets hit by that, he'll be in deep trouble, and he wonders how he's going to beat him within this kid's body. But he has an idea, saying he just needs to use his size to his advantage. Ha-young says it seems like Mujin wasn't just trying to escape training. While he didn't listen to the others, he was still training in his own way. He's training with a tree, saying he's practicing to take down Mugung. Instantly, Muyul asks how him rubbing against a tree will help. Ha-young looks down at him and chuckles, saying Mugung will teach him a great lesson. Mugung is happy that Ha-young is acknowledging him and apologizes to Mujin, saying he'll trample him. But then he sees Mujin throwing it back as he's loosening up his joints before their spar starts. Mujin asks Ha-young if they can start immediately. They both get annoyed, saying he is acting tough. He starts to step forward, saying he'll show him. He says he's ready to start too and that he'll show him the punches he's been training for the last 3 months. It starts, and Mujin runs straight at him. This startles Mugung, and as Mujin gets closer, Mugung tries to back away from him. He punches straight at his head, but it gets dodged. Everyone is surprised. Instantly, Mujin uses the dodge trajectory to grab onto Mugung's leg. He says he can't use the martial arts he's trained since he's from the special forces. He could kill the kid accidentally. So the most efficient way to take him down will be with a tackle. They fall to the floor after the spar started. The time it took for Mugung to be subdued was just a little over a second as he gets put into an arm bar. The students ask what's going on and wonder if Mugung can get out of this. Some of them are worried, saying it is impossible for him to be subdued so quickly and be in such pain. Mugung wonders what the hell is going on here. The second-class disciples begin to give Mugung some advice. But even though they don't know what an armbar is, they can tell it's bad. They know exactly how painful it must be for his arm. Mujin calls out to him, saying if he resists, his arm will break, so just surrender. The second-class disciples still try to tell him to get up, but Mujin assures him that if he exerts any more strength, he will snap his arm, so he needs to give up immediately. Mugung starts to grunt as his arm gets closer and closer to snapping, and then starts to just cry. Mujin is surprised, and so are the other kids. Mujin quickly lets go, saying he's sorry, and they all turn towards Haiyung, asking him what they should do now. Mujin helps Mugung get up, asking why. They had to make two kids fight, and Mujin is declared the winner. We learn that the chain punch is one of the 8 extremities fists, which uses the entire upper body to generate powerful force, allowing you to quickly defeat your opponent. It's known for being very powerful. Mugung has the most proficiency among the younger monks. Even the second-class disciples were impressed by Mugung's chain punch, yet he pathetically lost without any form of resistance to some weird techniques. Mugung keeps crying, saying that this is unfair. Mujin asks what he means. Mugung says he charged as soon as they started using something that wasn't the chain punch. He shouts, saying he can win against anyone in a fair fight. Mujin tries comforting him but messes up his name, which made him cry more. The other disciples say that Mugung has a point. Mujin turns around and sees them. They say that one should use the Shaolin arts when sparring here, saying he broke the rules. Mujin wonders what kind of ridiculous ideology that is. The disciple then asks why he didn't use the chain punch. He says if he had used the chain punch, the fight would have lasted for longer, and they could have gotten more injured, so he just prioritized making the duel quick. He said he did make him cry, but he didn't leave a single physical injury on his body. They say that's not nonsense since it wasn't a Shaolin art. He says they are the ones talking nonsense. They struggle to rebuttal since the chain punch was defeated so easily by some strange technique. At that, they don't want to admit it, but they are just refusing to acknowledge he lost. They don't want people to doubt the Shaolin arts, or that the new disciples might be discouraged and leave. They look back at Haiyung, wondering what the plan is, but they see him smiling at the whole situation. Haiyung calls out to him, asking if he truly did that technique just to not cause him harm. Mujin says yes. Haiyung says that is the true essence of Shaolin and smiles, saying he's the winner. Everyone is surprised by this. However, the reason his skill was more effective was because the opponent's level was that of a loser. The ultimate reason they learn martial arts is to take down evil and the demonic heads who've learned martial arts. So he'll show the true essence of Shaolin, the real power that can take down their enemies. He orders the rest to bring him a boulder. They bring one over. I think that's a big demonstration of their power. They start to wonder if he's going to break the rock with his fist, and Haiyung tells them to watch closely. This is the true power of the chain punch. He takes a deep breath and then ready himself, channeling his energy into his fists, then exhales upon punching the rock. The rock begins to crack and shatters as he punches a hole through it. The rock shatters to the ground, and everyone is pigging out of their gourds. Haiyung looks smug and turns after receiving all of their compliments. Even Mujin is stunlocked and says, "Whoa." He starts to grin, saying, "That's a real martial artist." He says, "This is how it should be. One hit being enough to break open a mountain. One swing can take down hundreds of enemies. A single punch putting a hole through someone." Then he realizes something. He says that Haiyung mentioned overpowering the enemy without harming them. Haiyung says yes like it's a question. Mujin points out he broke the boulder into pieces, and they all look at it and realize it doesn't make sense. Now they are thinking about it, so nobody could say anything. Later that day, we see another man named Hyun Sung talking about the fight with Haiyung. Then Haiyung says Mujin may be rather arrogant, but he trains his chain punch the most out of the students. He's worried though. Hyun Sung asks if he's worried that he's only training the chain punch to learn its weakness. He says yes, saying it could be bad if Mujin is a spy of one of the unorthodox sects or the demonic cult. Of course, Mujin is just a modern-era gym rat. Hyun Sung says he probably isn't, and he wouldn't do something so eye-catching if he were. Haiyung suggests maybe. It's reverse psychology, but Hyun Sung tells him not to worry. He's just a new disciple, and they'll find out over time if he's a spy or not. But he has an idea and says maybe he's from a martial family. Haiyung says it makes sense, as he doubts Mujin came up with those ideas by himself about the training. Hyun Sung says the greatest figure in a child's life is their father. Maybe he wanted to. But says since he defeated Mugung, he'll become more arrogant, wondering what to do about him. But then cooks something up, saying they can leave him to Biab Gang. Haiyung asks if he means the one in the discipline court. He says no, he's in the Arhat Hall instead. They agree it's a good idea. Then it jumps to some of the second-class disciples saying good night to one another. Then one of them spots something that shocks him. He says they should go somewhere else, and they look around to see what he's scared of. They see a man doing the horse stance, and we learn that it's none other than Biab Gang. They wonder what he's doing here. One of them says he's doing the horse stance, and the rest say no and ask why he's not at the training ground. They say he must have wanted to keep training without rest. They all start laughing, saying there's a reason he's called the Mad Dog. Dude is obsessed with training. They laugh, saying the discipline hall is a good fit for him. Then one of them tells him that he'll be moving to the Arhat Hall instead. He yells, asking why the hell he be doing that, and the other freaks out too, asking if they'll have to live with a mad dog again. He's always grilled the juniors ever since they were third-class disciples. But it turns out he wants to join all the halls and learn the differences in their rules before going back to the discipline court. They say it's expected. He's obsessed with the rules. Biab Gang has worked hard to be a role model for the rest. He also spent way more time training, and his knees were constantly under tension due to this. If he didn't use internal energy, he'd experience so much pain that walking would be tough. But he didn't care as he considered it to be part of his mental training. He chose to embrace the pain. He just finished doing the horse stance for 30 minutes. He's heard rumors of Mujin and how he's a problem child, but says he'll teach him the correct mindset a disciple should have. It jumps to the next day with the disciples freaking out that Biab Gang is standing in front of them all. They ask, and he says he'll be joining them all today. Mujin sees him, and Biab Gang laughs, saying he's looking forward to working with them all. Mujin says he's absolutely diced to the gills. He notices the second-class disciples aren't happy about him being here, but the first-class disciples have no idea who the hell he is. Mujin quickly understood what's going on, and says he must be Biab Gang, almost like they haven't been saying it for so long. They start their morning training, and the first thing up is horse stance. Biab Gang says the first thing to do is find the root problem. If he knows the problem, he can solve it. He walks behind Mujin while saying all of this, then spots him saying his legs are spread wider, then his shoulders. He comments on how his posture is different, and starts to mimic the way he's doing it. He starts copying the squats he was doing and says it's not any different, and he feels the same pain as from the horse stance. He gets angry, thinking it's just a trick, and goes to say something to him. Biab Gang asks what he means, and he tells him his posture is wrong. Biab Gang asks him to explain, and Mujin realizes he'll have to teach him so much, and says he doesn't know why he's copying him, but he can hear his knees screaming with every squat, and he can't ignore this. He thinks about how it would be beneficial to have him on his side and decides to win him over since he has authority here. He tells him that copying him will just make his knees worse and asks if he can trust him and listen to how he instructs him to move. We see Biab Gang in a lunge pose, and Mujin says it's good he's flexible and says that this technique loosens the muscles in his knees. If he does this before the actual exercise, he'll be able to exercise smoothly while reducing the pressure placed on his knees. He tells him to do it for a 30-second interval, and that'll make a set, and he just needs to do it 3 times. Biab Gang asks what a set is. Mujin says. He misspoke, then notices that his knees are shaking and quickly massages it, asking if he's feeling better, but he looks visibly pained. Mujin says this is bad. If just a light touch hurts his knees, it must be insanely damaged. Biab Gang starts to calm down, and says at first it felt like someone hit his knee, but now it feels refreshing. Mujin says alright, then they were on the second round, so they should start again since training waits for no man. Biab Gang starts to wonder what kind of kid Mujin is. The other students see Mujin encouraging him, and Ha-young wonders what the hell is going on. Mujin says when his knees feel bad he just has to do this due to his nickname of being the Mad Dog. The other second-class disciples understand exactly what kind of obsessive person he is, but now they see he's being friendly, training with a new monk. We see Mujin tell him to rest a bit, then they'll do it again 15 times. Mujin explains how earlier he was doing air squats, but he shouldn't since his knees are cooked, and he needs to bend his knees just slightly to take the pressure off his knees. He says he'll summarize it, and in the sequence: first, you bend your knees slightly and slowly descend down. Second, as you go to sit you must focus on your glutes and thighs to descend rather than the knees. Third, just like step 2, only use the same parts when ascending. He asks how his knees feel, and Biob Gang says they feel fine. Mujin says that's good and to rest a little. He says he's definitely feeling less pain. Mujin says now they've done this, the next exercise will be focused on his calves. He explains that usually those with fierce appearances are often weak to friendly people. Mujin quickly compliments him, and Biob Gang laughs, saying he's been here for 18 years. The first-class disciples wonder if he's truly gone mad, and Ha-young starts to pray since his blood pressure is spiking like crazy, and he decides to ignore them for now. They start to head to get food and Mujin reminds him to make sure to do as he said before he trains to others. It looks like Biob Gang was blindly following his orders, but that isn't the case. He's decided to follow him after trying his technique by himself. This is what he's decided after receiving personal training, stretching lessons, and a massage from a top-class personal trainer. He thinks his techniques are incredible. He says they were really effective, and he experiences almost none of the usual pain he does with his knees, and he could feel the muscles on his legs stretch as he trained. He asks Mujin if it's techniques taught by his family. He asks what he means. Biob Gang explains that since his techniques are so effective he must be from an extraordinary family. He was told those techniques were passed down within Mujin's family. He smirks, saying this is a good misunderstanding. He says he did act strangely at the start, and wondered how to explain it all, but now he won't. He goes along with it. Biob Gang laughs, saying they are goat, but that his praise only applies to the treatment for his knees. They are training for martial arts, and the Shaolin is 1,000 years old. He understands Mujin's heart for his family, but it'd be great if he trained the Shaolin way too. He says he'll take note of that. Then Muyo asks if he's done. Mujin says yes and tells Biob Gang he'll see him later. Biob Gang smiles, watching him leave, and hears Ha-young clear his throat. He apologizes for being unsightly. Ha-young says he's glad he's aware. Biob Gang says the know the enemy quote, and Ha-young sighs, asking what he thinks about it. He says from what he's experienced, Mujin isn't from a martial family but rather a family of physicians. He asks him why he thought so. He continues, saying he should say this first, but his knees are all torn from the training. He didn't tell anyone as he didn't want them to worry, and more importantly, he didn't want to show his weak side. Even the juniors who trained with him for 10 years haven't noticed his knees are screwed up, but Mujin could tell right away from how he was bent, and then Mujin taught him movements that didn't hurt his knees at all. Ha-young says his family must be physicians, not a martial art family, and wonders what to do, saying the training of Shaolin is about to collapse. Biob Gang says not to worry. He's sure that he will teach Mujin the techniques of Shaolin slowly but surely, and young kids usually listen to adults they are close with instead of force. He'll get close and slowly teach him the Shaolin methods. Ha-young says all right, but to take it slow for now, and that he's counting on him. A while later in the afternoon training, we see Mujin is annoyed, saying having to do Buddhism lessons after breakfast blows, and he wonders if it's because he's young, but the food coma is real. They head to their training, and Ha-young says since they are good at the chain punch, it's time to move to the next step. One can only exert the full prowess of martial arts by combining internal and external energy, so now they'll start to prepare them on their internal energy journey. He sends out 2 disciples to demonstrate how to them all. He tells them to get into the lotus position, and Mujin wonders what's going to happen. He sees them sitting down on the floor, and they cross their legs. He says he recognizes it now. They both close their eyes and focus on breathing. He tells them to take a deep breath and let it pass through their nose and throat fully and keep breathing until it reaches their energy cores. Mujin starts to get excited, saying he can finally learn the martial arts he's been dreaming of. He says he's been getting sick of the same exercises for now, and now it's time for martial arts. He wasn't the only one excited, all of the other students were too, as it gave new reasons for them to train hard. They were all dreaming of being able to break the boulder like Ha-young too. They focused on his voice and followed the breathing patterns too, but Mujin says something about this training is weird.
He noticed that they were doing a simple meditation. It was somewhat different from the Shaolin and training methods he saw from the novels. Is this a joke? Contrary to the novels where they teach them energy cultivation, such as yin and yang, the 5 elements, bagua, and other philosophical stuff, he just assumed that there was a good reason for all of this. An hour later, Mujin, who had been tackling all the training methods of Shaolin until now, had been doing his best this time as well to follow all that he was told to do. This was because he was excited, thinking that he was about to learn how to do incredible feats like having the source of power that allows a human to split a mountain, the ability to fly high in the skies. He assumed he would be able to obtain energy, a transcendental power that would allow him to do all of that. The Manhwa nerd soul within him was feeling excited as he was about to learn cultivation techniques from the epitome of Murim novels. He couldn't fathom the fact that it was about to happen. Ha-young then asked them to open their eyes and stated that the energy cultivation that they just learned was only a simple breathing method that would allow them to feel the energy and accumulate it within the body, which is the first step in cultivating. Since they must feel the incoming energies first, he assigned them to do it every day and practice it hard so they could feel the energy, which made our hero have no choice but to accept. He frowned, knowing that they would be only learning breathing techniques. I want to break boulders. He remembered Ha-young's statement that they must be able to sense energy first before they could gain it. A senior then gave him a book. It was the book that the second-class disciples used, and it has images of human meridians. Ha-young informed them that there was no need for them to memorize the whole book, just memorize the meridians, which they could use when circulating energy and subduing opponents. Fortunately, Murim had an idea about meridians, all thanks to his contemporary knowledge. He knew that meridians are passageways of energy in the body. He was aware of the idea that energy was not the only thing that flowed in them, but inner energy did as well. Because of that understanding, the meridians were something necessary for martial arts. When Ha-young asked a senior to execute the move, he knew immediately that he was doing Tenghu and Kucha. That made him feel more determined to delve into the topic. The validation from Ha-young strengthened his resolve. Later that evening, while he was walking down the hallway, he was deeply implanting the knowledge into his mind. But then, he heard a familiar voice. He turned to see who it was, barking late in the day. It was none other than Mad Dog, trying to beat David Goggins' baddest MF record. He explained that his knees weren't hurting anymore, thanks to his training regimen. Now he could turn back to his old fetish of domestically abusing his joints. Murim was dumbfounded. He could hear his knees cracking. It was as if his effort went into not in Beab gang defense. He stated that he must push through the pain because iron gets only stronger when it's struck. But Murim explained, true, but it could only get stronger if you strike it right. It might break if you overdo it. He asked him to take a seat, to which he gladly did so. He warned him that he was about to show him a new technique that would hurt him for a bit, which was called the pressure-relieving technique. The Mad Dog tried his best to endure the pain each time our hero massaged his knees. The discomfort was intense, but he knew it was necessary for his recovery. Massaging, Murim was reminded of something about the past, a mistake that led him to struggle. Back when he was a member of the Special Forces, his body got severely injured when he tried to just grip through the training after having a sprain. Even though he suffered greatly, he was assigned a task to cross a river. Because of the traumatic event, he was forced to retire from the service. At that time, he lived through every day without any energy. Each day felt like a struggle just to get through. His lack of vitality made even the simplest tasks seem insurmountable, and he felt like he saw a ghost from the past every time he looked at Beab gang. He told him that if he were to get injured, he would be the only one who would suffer in the end because no one would take responsibility for it. Therefore, he wished that he took care of his own body more often. That made him smile, knowing that his junior was concerned for him. So he gave them assurance, stating that a Shaolin practitioner won't abandon their fellow disciples no matter what they went through. He gave them a bright smile and confidently said, "We won't abandon anyone, regardless of what happens." Murim felt relieved after hearing that. Who would have thought that along with huge muscles, the Mad Dog also has a huge heart? Beab gang informed him that he should trust him with everything starting tomorrow and train in the ways of Shaolin. After feeling relieved, he asked, "By the way, where were you going?" He replied that he would be going back to his room to practice the energy circulation technique he learned earlier. That confused him, knowing that he came from a family of physicians. He should already be able to feel energy from the inner energy cultivation techniques that were taught by his family. That caught Murim off guard. He forgot the fact that they thought he came from a family of physicians, so he told him instead that he forgot to learn it due to some personal circumstances at home. In that case, the mad dog offered to practice the energy circulation technique in the exact place they were standing, since he was also thinking of circulating his own energy after he was done with his training. He added that they must train together from now on every time he circulates his energy, and it might help him more, as he might be able to sense energy easier when Beabgang was on. So, do you want to do it? Murim was amused hearing his convincing words. He wouldn't let go of this opportunity to train with the notorious mad dog because no matter how much he tried to feel his energy, he still had no idea what it felt like. But things might be different if Beabgang cultivates beside him. He sat down in the lotus position, determined to give it a try. He was thrilled and wished to start circulating energy as soon as possible. The prospect of revitalizing his cultivation technique along with a pro filled him with excitement. The mad dog was feeling the excitement. He wanted to serve as a role model for his junior, determined to lead by example. He asked him to pay attention and learn from what he was about to see. He breathed deeply from his nose into his diaphragm. The deep inhale filled his lungs completely, bringing a sense of calm and focus, which left Murim in awe. Witnessing such mastery of breath control and concentration impressed him deeply. Just by looking at him, Murim knew that he was doing real energy circulation. The air around Beabgang felt different. He took that as a chance to see what was different between him and Beabgang. He wished to refine his own techniques to match his mastery. He started seeing an ominous aura engulfing Mad Dog, which he wasn't even able to see when he was doing it by himself. He wondered if that was what Hayoung was talking about previously, that same energy that was capable of slicing a mountain in half. All of the evil energy must gather within the body and be breathed out through the mouth. When breathing in, breathe in as deeply as you can. Then absorb the pure energy of nature until it reaches your energy core located at the center of the body. That's the difference he found between him and Beabgang. Although he struggled a lot, he did his best to perfect his technique, showing his determination to learn Shaolin martial arts. After a while, his core started glowing, indicating that he managed to reach the flow of energy. I can feel it. Despite feeling the urge to celebrate, he maintained his composure. He understood the importance of staying focused and calm in the moment, ensuring that he must gather all of his energy. But then he found out that he only had a tiny amount of energy within him, unlike Beabgang's energy. In fact, it was so small that it was even a miracle that he was able to feel it. But then he remembered that back in his world, people called the truffle chips despite only having 0.01% truffle. Meanwhile, we saw Beabgang's surprised face, as if he saw a monk breakdancing during morning meditation. He couldn't fathom the fact that our hero had already felt the energy, confirming that the master's assumption about Murim was correct. He was indeed a genius that could become a pillar that will hold up the 1,000-year history of Shaolin. Back to our hero, he was able to get a rough grasp of how to sense energy and store it. He was able to stabilize his breathing technique a lot thanks to his determination to learn. But then he suddenly felt a chill in the air. When he opened his eyes, it was already dark. Observing this, he noticed that Mad Dog was patiently waiting for him, exuding a sense of maturity and supportiveness to his junior. He apologized, admitting he didn't know it was already late. However, the senior didn't mind it and reassured him instead. He suggested that he should go back to his accommodation, asking him to take a rest. While Beabgang stared at him, he saw something different around him. This kid never fails to amuse me. There was an unusual aura or presence that hadn't been there before. This newfound energy or change in Murim's demeanor intrigued him, as he had already exceeded the expected level of someone who just started sensing energy. He complimented him, saying that he would be able to learn the enlightenment cultivation technique of Shaolin from now on. So Murim asked, "I don't need to memorize meridians anymore." Mad Dog replied calmly, "You came from a family of physicians. Shouldn't you know it all by now?" Knowing he was about to get caught red-handed, he just brushed his statement off as a joke. He then left, saying that there was no need to tell unnecessary jokes and that they must go back to the temple since it was already getting late. Murim couldn't handle the stupid family of physicians setting. The constant pressure to lie and meet the expectations of the elders felt suffocating to him. Because of that, he was left with no choice but to memorize the whole meridians in a day. The next morning of training, Hayoung asked everyone who was able to memorize the meridians to step forward. He felt a sense of relief knowing that he was one of the people to step forward. But then he noticed that almost everyone was able to memorize the meridians in a day. He was shocked to know that sensing energy was simpler than he thought, seeing that there were quite a few young monks who had stepped forward. Murim, supposed to be a genius martial artist, thought, "What's happening here?" Hayoung then introduced a book that contained the basics of Shaolin cultivation techniques, which could help them build a foundation. He opened the book with the intention of gently instructing the young monks, ensuring that they gained the necessary information. Meanwhile, the other monks who had failed to memorize the meridians in a day watched in amusement, especially his best friend, who was also feeling proud of our hero. When Murim came back, he was immediately asked, "How were you able to memorize it in just a single day?" Our hero replied by saying that he could do it too since the basics weren't complicated. The innocent kid was dumbfounded when Bro started yapping about circulating energy and following a sequence. Although he didn't grasp a single thing, he was in awe of how intellectual his best friend seemed. So he instead told him once again that he could also do it, but for now, he must focus on breathing first. Murim then continued memorizing the meridians and sequences until he got it perfectly. He memorized the book Hayoung had given previously. Thanks to that, he felt his energy filling up faster, even though it only lasted for a short time. He was proud of it. He found it unbelievable that he was finally delving into the study of inner energies, a topic he had only encountered in novels before, a perfect feat of a martial arts protagonist. His training progress went smoothly. Every second he spent training brought small wins. However, his concentration vanished as soon as Muyul called him. He asked, "Where did you go all this time?" When he turned around, he saw Muyul carrying a monk who appeared lifeless. He was taken aback and bewildered by the sight of Muyul carrying what appeared to be a corpse. He tried to figure out what had happened, knowing that Muyul wasn't capable of killing unless it was the last slice of spinach. Then all bets were off. However, Muyul quickly reassured him that the monk was not a corpse. This brought a sense of relief, mixed with lingering confusion about the situation. The wild monk he found was named Mukyung, and he had joined the temple earlier than him. Muyul also explained that he couldn't carry the monk, so he instead dragged him face first, as if the young boy's face were bulletproof. Our hero then noticed something that prompted him to rise from his seat. His gaze sharpened due to worry. "Are those bruises?" He carefully observed the poor monk, studying his condition with a mix of concern and curiosity. He noticed that the dirt on the monk's arm was likely caused by Muyul, but what disturbed him more were the bruises on his back. These marks hinted at something where someone must have done that to the poor child. Seeing the pattern of his bruises, he assumed that the monk had been beaten up. Every mark on his body looked like a footprint, which made him feel alarmed, knowing that there was a huge chance that Mukyung had experienced bullying. It suddenly dawned on him that the name Mukyung felt familiar. Mukyung, tall, scrawny, and gaunt unlike other kids, he looked like a scarecrow with sunken cheeks. Right now, that was the image that the novel Murim remembered in passing. However, the memory that Kang Yuk knew was different. Despite not remembering his face, he knew that the name was familiar, as he had already heard that name somewhere. However, he couldn't remember. even though he tried his best to recall it. He just focused on the matter of why he got beaten up. Murim was determined to figure out who bullied him. However, he didn't have a single idea of who it was, but he did have an idea that could help him track down the suspected person that Mu looked up to, someone who had joined the temple before Mu Kyung, who could potentially hold clues on finding the perpetrator. It was none other than the person he sparred with previously, mugging, the middle-aged looking child. Their intent was clear, seeking clarification and understanding regarding the situation involving the poor monk. On the other hand, Mugging appeared puzzled by their decision to approach him like a cat being asked to participate in a dog show. Mugging was sweating profusely and feeling bewildered by this unexpected interaction. His confusion was evident as he tried to comprehend the reason behind their approach. But things went from serious to an 80s comedy show atmosphere when Muyul accidentally dropped the poor kid. It was like he used the finish him combo from Mortal Kombat on Mu Kyung. A tense silence hung in the air thanks to the little dude's random head drop. Back to the main point. Mugging refused to help them, saying that he wouldn't waste his precious time on our hero and his friend. But our hero looked him dead in the eye and stated, "You're our senior. It is a must that you help us." Mugging clenched his teeth and told him that he was his junior, therefore, he must follow him. However, Murim provoked him by asking if he was fine with becoming a senior who lost to his junior. But Mugging stood his ground, saying that he only lost because he let his guard down. However, his patience finally wore thin when our hero informed him once again that he had been defeated by someone younger. He delivered his chain punch, intent on knocking him out. His precise movement, along with his determination to end the confrontation, was imminent. But once again, our hero ducked, dodging the punch. His reflexes were sharp, allowing him to evade the attack with ease. He firmly grabbed his gi and executed a judo throw, showing another, unusual move to Mugging. He covered Mugging's neck with his arm, attempting to execute a twister chokehold. Mugging grew increasingly frustrated, realizing that his chain punch was ineffective against our hero. It was as if he was fighting an epic 20 kilograms champion. Murim smirked and confidently told him that the outcome would always be the same, no matter how many times they fought. His words carried a challenge and a hint of superiority. Mugging, however, refused to give up. His determination was unwavering despite the setbacks. But then, our cunning hero made a proposal, suggesting that he would reveal the secret of why Mugging had lost if he disclosed who had harmed the poor monk. He let go of the submission hold, signaling his willingness to negotiate and reveal the secret. Mugging immediately created distance between them, aware of the possibility that Murim might execute another weird technique. Murim knew that Mugging held a grudge against him, but he felt it was crucial for him to uncover the truth about this matter. Mugging then asked him if he would keep his promise once he revealed it, his tone cautious, betraying a mixture of hope and skepticism. He went straight to business and asked, why did they hurt him? Mugging revealed that the perpetrator was none other than Mutai, one of the outer sect disciples of Shaolin and the only son of the owner of the Seo Bull escort establishment. It turns out that Mu Kyung's father was a gatekeeper at the Seo Bull escort establishment. Senior Hai Mun was trying to recruit Mutai back then, but he also saw Mu Kyung's talent while he was there, resulting in them both being in the temple. Although it was a good opportunity for Mu Kyung, the problem was that Mutai thought he was trying to step over his head despite being the gatekeeper, so he started bullying him. It was a very unfortunate scenario for Mu Kyung, but they couldn't help it since his father was working for the Mutai family, and he couldn't afford to tell the truth and snitch on Mutai. Our hero was very frustrated after hearing the news. It would have been understandable if it had happened in a normal school, however. It happened in a Shaolin Temple where they teach the ways of Buddha. He wanted Mugging to take responsibility and act as a good role model since he was their senior. But Mugging defended himself, asking what he could do when he was just a kid. Murim rebutted, saying that he was the strongest, therefore, he had the power to protect the weak, but Mugging stood his ground, asserting that he was outnumbered. This made our hero even more frustrated, and he pointed his finger at Mule, stating that according to his claim, he was the strongest. Both of them then looked at the innocent kid. Their gazes made Mule feel awkward. Mugging went into tomato mode after knowing that Mule looked up to him, prompting him to reveal that Mutai and his friends weren't taking the training seriously. He frowned when Mugging told him that since Mutai was a disciple from the outer sect, they naturally used the martial arts of the Shaolin Temple as a basis. He added that Mutai and his group had probably already learned the basics, and that's why they didn't need to take the training seriously. That reminded him that Mutai and his friends might be the same people who stepped forward back then. Despite being a bully, Mutai had already completed the learning prerequisite. Meanwhile, Mukyung had finally gained consciousness, appearing as disoriented as a raccoon caught raiding a refrigerator in broad daylight. Mukyung wondered where he was, feeling disoriented after receiving a knockout blow from the spoiled brat. The moment he opened his eyes, a horrible sight greeted him. He found himself surrounded by 3 peculiar monks that looked like they were about to consume him. Looking at him, he felt empathy for Mukyung's situation. He understood that informing Hayoung about his bullying experience might cause more harm than good. He wished to know if there was a way he could help. His concern for Mukyung's well-being compelled him to seek a solution or offer assistance in any way possible. He then realized a way he could help him, an idea that could help him solve Mukyung's predicament. He immediately told him that he could help, but emphasized that Mukyung must listen and follow his instructions carefully. The poor monk became emotional, knowing that someone was willing to help him. Gratitude and relief washed over him as he realized he wasn't alone in facing his challenges. Our hero smiled confidently at him, saying they must first report the situation to Hayoung. That statement shocked him, but not in a good way, because if it were that easy, he would have already done it. However, Mujin stated that it was simple. They would be sorted out if he became a principal martial disciple. A principal martial disciple is someone who has been accepted into the main martial group and continues to train in the temple. Knowing that the disciples from the outer sect usually remain outside Shaolin, they won't be able to mess with him anymore once he gets inside the Shaolin Temple. However, that wasn't an easy task, because not everyone can become a principal disciple. Everyone realized Mujin's goal. They were shocked to hear such an ambitious plan except for Muyul, who looked too cute and innocent to understand a complicated topic. Come to think of it, they won't be able to threaten a principal martial disciple of the Shaolin Temple. Although there was a possibility that it wouldn't work, there was a big what-if inside his mind. He remembered what Mad Dog had told him previously, therefore, he needed to test whether what he said was true. He offered his hand to the poor kid and told him that Hayoung and the Shaolin Temple would never abandon their people. In a serious tone, he asked him again if he wanted to try his proposal. His gentle and kind demeanor softened the conversation, creating a reassuring atmosphere that he wasn't alone. A few minutes had gone by, and Mukyung still wasn't giving him a response. He wondered if it was because he wasn't confident that he could become a main disciple. His voice was shaking, revealing his skepticism. This hesitation was evident in his tone, suggesting uncertainty or doubt about the proposal. But then Mujin decided to be blunt and asked if he intended to make his father stay working at the Mutai household. That thought filled him with anxiety, his mind racing with worries and uncertainties, knowing that he would remain a laughingstock. He closed his eyes and thought deeply about the proposal, weighing its potential outcomes and implications. In the end, he took our hero's hand and decided to give it a try. He wanted to do it one more time and fix everything, determined to make things right, which made Mujin glad. Mujin then gladly opened up about his second plan because he wouldn't allow Mutai to bully him until he became a main disciple. That prompted Mukyung to ask about his second plan, and it turns out that the plan was simple. All he had to do was beat the heck out of Mutai and his friends. 3 days later, during their free time in the afternoon, we get to see a glimpse of random monks having a conversation in a narrow alley. They were whispering in each other's ears as if they were planning something horrendous. It was revealed that those monks were Mutai and his goons, trying to cause more trouble for Mukyung. Mutai asked for his presence by blackmailing him, saying that he would send a letter to his family if he didn't show up. His goons, Muhwai and Muhwon, were eager to get their hands on the young monk. They wanted to beat him as soon as possible. News came to them that our hero Mujin and his best friend Mule had started hanging out with Mukyung, but further rumors had come saying that Mugging was also with them. They wondered why the gorilla-looking monk, who always acted like a role model, had started hanging out with them. However, that only gave them more excitement, as it would give them more practice targets. Mutai couldn't wait to put his hands on our hero, knowing that it had been quite a while since he wished to punch Mujin. The same goes for his minions. They noticed that Mujin had been acting way too out of place lately. They then proceeded to mock Mugging, saying that he was a crybaby after losing in a duel. Coincidentally, Mugging, along with his friends, arrived on the scene. They were shocked that the very person they were backstabbing was in front of them. The four of them were determined to fight these bullies and give them a lesson, especially our hero, who told these bullies not to run away. The bullies laughed like a malfunctioning car alarm, saying that they would never run just because he was able to beat a gorilla with no brain. That statement fueled Mugging's fury even more. He was eager to initiate the fight immediately to ensure that such a foolish remark would never be uttered again. Mohwon, with his large nose, stepped forward to face Mugging, while our hero chose to confront Muhwai. Our hero then reminded Mukyung about their deal. You know what to do. You'll deal with him. He reminded him if he still recalled what he had said, to which he assured that he did, therefore he must not worry. But that wasn't the case for Mukyung. He was skeptical about whether he could beat his bully. Mutai then provoked Mukyung, sarcastically complimenting him that he finally made a friend. The young monks stood facing each other, their gazes locked in a tense stare down, implying that an epic fight was about to come. Meanwhile, Mutai's intimidating presence had an effect on Mukyung, causing him to hesitate momentarily as he assessed his opponent's imposing demeanor. His body began to tremble at the sight of Mutai's menacing look, so Mutai took advantage, saying, "You know what would happen to you and your father if you were to hit me, right?" That statement caused Mukyung to hesitate momentarily, unsure of how to respond to the implied threat. He remembered how diligently his father worked for the Mutai family, and he didn't want to jeopardize that relationship. But then he remembered Mujin's statement, claiming that his father would remain in that horrible household if he kept being a coward. Moreover, if he wanted to alter the situation, he needed to teach them a lesson and strive to become a main disciple. Despite his tears of fear, he summoned the courage to proceed. He charged at Mutai, demanding that he leave his father alone and face him directly instead. However, Mutai managed to dodge the attack, sidestepping out of harm's way. He was shocked to see that the one he once thought of as a coward was now defending himself. He retaliated with a punch of his own and asked if Mukyung had lost his mind. On the other hand, Mugging effortlessly caught his opponent's hand, gripping it firmly and preventing any further movement. His opponent was impressed, realizing that Mugging had reacted swiftly to his punch, recognizing that he wasn't just a gorilla-looking kid. Mugging then strengthened his grip even more, to the point that his opponent had started asking why his mama brought him into the world. He couldn't fathom the sight of Mugging, who was now exuding a completely different vibe compared to before. Flashback. It turns out that Mugging had previously refused to join their forces. However, Mujin's statement that he was scared had triggered him to cooperate. He reluctantly listened to Mujin's proposal, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. But when our hero brought up the topic of why he lost to him, it piqued his interest. Our hero admitted that his chain punch was indeed strong, but that was actually all there was to it. Knowing that Mugging was still confused, our hero advised him that he would learn faster by experiencing it firsthand with his own body. He told him that he would be hitting him with his own chain punch and wanted Mugging to avoid it. Mugging's body got tense as he absorbed our hero's words. Determined to overcome his doubts, he decided to face the challenge head-on, hoping that the experience would bring him the clarity and strength he sought. He was able to easily dodge the first punch, his reflexes sharp and precise. Our hero asked Mugging to prepare himself again and try dodging his second technique. Our hero wound up his punch and channeled his strength, aiming to test Mugging's reflexes. Mugging was determined to evade the attack, his eyes locked on our hero's movements, his body tensed in anticipation as he prepared to dodge with all his might. But instead of a punch, our hero delivered a kick that caught Mugging off guard, and he failed to dodge it. Mugging screamed in pain, demanding to know why he had been deceived. However, Murim offered him a revelation, saying, "That's precisely your mistake. You're too predictable." He explained that in order for an attack to work, one must deceive their opponent. That revelation sparked a realization in Mugging's mind, opening up a new understanding of combat strategy. He added that although he acknowledged that Mugging had a fast and powerful punch, he was able to dodge it simply by judging his posture. But Mugging refused to accept it. He explained that he just needed to be faster so his opponents wouldn't be able to dodge it, even though they knew it was coming. Murim knew that he had a point, however. He needed to be the strongest in the world if he wanted that to happen. It turns out that he learned those techniques from all the novels that he had read, such as the unorthodox Tyrant Chronicles, where the blade techniques of the protagonist were considered the strongest in both unorthodox factions and in the world. In other words, if you were not the strongest, that knowledge wouldn't apply to Mugging. So until then, he suggested that he must deceive his opponent by winning the psychological warfare, just like in the game Rock, Paper, Scissors. Mugging was hesitant, but in the end, he accepted his advice, understanding the necessity of improvements as their senior. Back in the present, Mugging smirked at his enemy, thrilled to show his new knowledge. The bully agonized in pain with each passing second that Mugging firmly held his hand. Rage was evident in his voice when Mugging demanded that the bully dodge his chain punch at all costs. Our hero's advice echoed each time he fought the bully. He remembered the time when he contemplated whether to acknowledge the usage of deception. For him, using deception was a cowardly act. However, he couldn't justify why. In the end, he admitted that Murim was right, and since he learned something new from him, he wanted to show him something. Mugging claimed that it would be dangerous for our hero to fight Mutai and his goons. At first, our boy thought that he was coping. What is this boy yapping about? Mugging revealed that there was a way for him to become even stronger, which he didn't use in their previous fights. He added that if it had been a real fight, he would have used the martial arts of his family. Mugging guided them to an empty spot in the temple, determined to demonstrate their family's martial arts prowess. Our hero asked, "Why did you bring us to such an empty spot?" But Mugging clearly stated that he didn't want to upset the elders by using their family's martial arts. He asked Mule to stay on the lookout, as he was about to execute something amazing. He closed his eyes and breathed deeply, and then an ominous green and yellow aura engulfed his body, followed by a menacing stare. Mugging prepared to showcase the formidable skills passed down through generations in his family. With all of his might, he demonstrated the art, showcasing the precision and power honed through years of practice. His fist looked as solid as a rock, reflecting the strength and intensity of his martial arts technique. Murim was amused to witness such a powerful punch, which left him breathless and unable to formulate speech. He noticed that the form was different compared to when Mugging used his chain punch. It was as if he was looking at a high school-level kickboxer. He was left in awe considering that Mugging was still young yet possessed such power. Every kick or punch Mugging delivered left a snapping sound, heightening Murim's awareness of the potential danger when facing Mutai and his crew. "I see, so if I fight Mutai and the others now, they'll all use their own martial arts against me." With the skill he demonstrated, Mugging was confident that it would leave a lasting impression on our hero. Our hero admitted that Mugging had impressed him, now understanding why he was regarded as the strongest young monk. But he knew that all of the young monks were still unable to freely control their own inner energy. If that was everything they had, he was confident that he would be able to take them down. Our hero taunted the bully, saying that if he didn't come, he would be the one who would charge forward instead. The bully took the bait, heading straight for our hero with the intent to knock him out. But our hero was confident that after seeing Mugan, he could discern the specific forms and postures they needed to harness their own energy. Compared to Mugging, the bully's punch seemed like child's play, lacking the speed and power that Mugen had witnessed earlier. He swiftly dodged the attack, effortlessly evading the bully's punch with a quick and precise movement. He anticipated that the young kid would use a chain punch. The move felt too predictable, almost like watching a scene from a 90s movie. The bully was baffled and frustrated to see that the technique he had harnessed was easily dodged. He stepped back, recognizing that his beating Mugging wasn't a fluke. But our hero wanted to conclude their duel. He charged forward like a madman, determined to end the confrontation decisively. He employed the iconic Dempsey roll to close the distance swiftly. That made the bully panic and flinch, allowing our hero to close the distance even more quickly. He noticed that the bully tried to defend his face, trying not to ruin the skincare routine that he had followed for years. So our hero instead punched the body, aiming for a vulnerable spot just below the ribs. The bully felt extreme pain as our hero's punch landed with precision. However, he mustered the courage to retaliate from the attack, only for him to leave himself wide open for a counter. Our hero tripped him, causing a huge bang that reverberated across the alley. When the bully opened his eyes, he saw our hero standing over him, looking like he had transcended from heaven. Our hero then punched the ground, sending debris flying in all directions. The punch served as a warning to the bully never to mess with him and his friends again. The bully started crying, realizing the mistake he had made. He reflected on the consequences of his actions, knowing he had crossed the line. When our hero realized that he had overdone it again, he made another kid cry. The bully started acting like a spoiled brat, threatening to tell his father about what had happened. He was left with no choice but to scratch his shiny head, contemplating his next move on what to do with this troublemaker. When he turned around to check on his comrades, Mugan had already incapacitated the opposition, leaving them unconscious on the ground. When he was able to confirm that Mugging was safe, he was horrified when he saw Mukyung, who mercilessly gave Mutai a beating to the point that he wasn't recognizable anymore. He pleaded with him to stop hitting him, as the fight was already over. That was when he remembered the name Mukyung, a name that had been bothering him for quite some time. Mukyung, the one who stained both of his hands with blood, eyes full of madness. He felt a chill run down his spine with the realization. In Shaolin Chronicle, author Go Kyung's first novel, there was a character in The Return of the Demon Supreme, and it introduces the most insane character of all time, Mukyung, also known as the Blood Monk. As always, the novel that our hero liked when he was young, he had forgotten it all as time passed by. But there was an illustration of a memorable character that was hidden away in a corner of his memories. This character would always say that all humans were evil, and that he would use blood to wash away the cycle of sins from them, a lunatic blood monk. As he witnessed this horrible scene, he was reminded of the madness and horror of the Mukyung that he had read about in the novel. Seeing Mukyung with bloody hands and crimson red eyes of anger, our hero was gripped by deep fear. What have I awakened? Mugen only wished to raise his self-confidence. However, he did not expect to see such an appearance. He quickly snapped himself back to reality and realized that he must stop Mukyung, or else he might kill Mutai. He and Miyu rushed forward as fast as they could to stop this soon-to-be madman. They tackled and locked his fist to prevent him from inflicting more harm, but Mukyung was persistent and shouted at them, saying that they must let him go because he had tried to bully his dad. Eventually, he fell to his knees and gave up, feeling frustrated that he couldn't punish his opposition more. Our hero noticed that Mukyung's strength was impeccable despite having the build of a scarecrow. Murim stared at him, trying to figure out what to do next. But then Mukyung started crying like a baby, his tears streaming down his face uncontrollably, transforming his intimidating face into a blotchy redness. He felt a sense of relief knowing that he wasn't a blood monk yet, but an ordinary child instead. He remembered that the blood monk only appeared as a crazy person in the novel, but it did not mention how he became a blood monk. He wondered if it was because he crossed a line that wasn't meant to be crossed, after enduring such absurd situations where he was constantly bullied. But then, Mad Dog arrived, spoiling the party and making these troublemakers anxious. Our hero immediately realized that they were in huge trouble because Mad Dog, of all people, was the one who saw them. Mad Dog was furious, demanding a good explanation for what had just happened. His eyes bored into them, conveying both disappointment and anger. It looked like there was no escape in such a situation. Bodies on the floor and one kid was grieving while crying. Mad Dog even noticed that mugging was involved, even though he should be a role model, not a subject of chaos. Our hero knew that the situation was perilous, and with each second they did not talk, the more Mad Dog was getting furious. He closed his eyes, debating whether to tell the truth or not. He approached Mukyung and put his hands on his shoulder. That action confused Mad Dog because he was expecting a reply, but rather Murim approached Mukyung instead, like a homosexual enjoyer. His eyes widened from what he saw, a horrible sight that no human being deserved to experience, especially as young as Mukyung. Our hero asked Mad Dog to take a good look at Mukyung and grasp his pain. Mukyung's bruises were everywhere, marking his body with vivid evidence of the pain he had endured. Each contusion told a story of pain and struggle, highlighting the severity of Mutai's bullying. Mad Dog was disgusted. He demanded to know what had happened, his voice tinged with a mix of frustration and concern. "Tell me immediately what happened," he ordered. Our hero revealed that those injuries had been inflicted by his fellow monks, who had bullied him ever since he came to the temple. That's why Murim decided to help him. Knowing they had called Mukyung once again to beat him up, Mad Dog became even more furious after hearing this news. He looked at the bullies, demanding to know if what Murim had said was true. He asked the bullies to raise their heads and look him in the eye as they answered his question. Noticing that they wouldn't give him an answer, he approached them directly and warned them that there would be severe punishment if they lied. The other seniors then arrived, as late as cops in movies, and asked why they were hearing loud yells. The bullies, realizing they had no escape, cried out guilty for their sins. The seniors couldn't believe that such a thing had happened in the sacred monastery. They would never expect that a monk would discriminate against their peers. However, Mad Dog remained calm. He turned to Mukyung and asked for clarification, wanting to hear directly if he had truly experienced bullying. Mukyung hesitated to tell the truth, afraid that revealing the bullying might make the situation worse, knowing that his father worked for the bully's family. But our hero patted him on the shoulder, reassuring him that everything would be all right because Mad Dog was known for his fairness and justice. Therefore, Mukyung had no reason to be scared. He could be assured that his concerns would be heard and addressed with due consideration. Tears started dripping from his eyes as he prepared to recount his painful experiences. Mukyung broke down in uncontrollable tears, slowly recounting to the seniors what he had experienced over the past 2 months. The pain in his voice was evident as he uttered each word. Because of Mukyung's burst of emotions, he was unable to tell the details articulately. However, he was able to get the main point across to Mad Dog, who patiently listened and empathized with Mukyung. Our hero approached Mad Dog, reminding him of his statement that the Shaolin Temple would never abandon their own disciples regardless of the situation. Since Mukyung was a disciple of the temple, he had thought that he needed protection. Mad Dog reminded him that his actions were wrong because Mutai and the others were also a part of the temple. That triggered a switch in our hero, who asked if they would still consider them even though they had threatened Mukyung's life and his father's. He was beginning to feel skeptical about the temple's beliefs. The two of them stared intensely at each other, silence hanging heavy between them as both of them tried to make a point. Someone then interrupted, agreeing that our hero's statement was correct. However, it would only be true if he was telling the truth. He asked for time to conduct a thorough investigation right here, right now. In the meantime, they must wait for the result. The man was none other than Hyan's son, the Arhat Hall leader. He confirmed that if they were able to verify his statement, then those children would cease to be disciples of the Shaolin Temple. Our hero calmed down, stating that it would be just right to conduct a fair and just investigation. Sure, you can investigate, but then Hyan Sung added that even though they ceased the bullies from becoming disciples of the temple, what happened in the hall would never be overlooked either, because the Shaolin martial arts are meant to subdue opponents, not kill. He pointed at Mukyung, telling him that what they did to Mutai was too brutal, considering that he was still a child. Quickly, Mukyung apologized for beating him and sought to defend himself by explaining his reasons, but our hero prevented him from explaining further, extending his arm to silence Mukyung. Mid-sentence, Mujin decided to take the blame, saying that he was the one who did that. He was too frustrated, after seeing Mukyung's wounds, which resulted in him losing control of his emotions. Mukyung was shocked. He did not expect Mujin to take the blame, especially after everything he had helped him to regain his confidence. He started looking at Mujin with inspiration, seeing him as someone he could look up to for his courage and selflessness. It turns out there was a purpose for that action, as our hero knew that if Mukyung's belief was formed after shouldering all the unwanted responsibilities and being betrayed by the world, he must do everything to prevent that, to stop him from becoming the blood monk. Therefore, by trying to protect him from becoming the blood monk, he aimed to be the best comrade that Mukyung could ever have, a person that someone he could rely on. In the aftermath of the fight, Mad Dog took our hero to the place where they meditate while facing the wall to attain enlightenment. He was tasked to stay there while looking at the wall and meditate repeatedly. Not long after that, they arrived at their destination, where he was assigned to meditate in a small cave. It served as a punishment for his previous action. Our hero took his punishment like a man, enduring it without complaint or resistance. He knew it was necessary to uphold justice and fairness within the temple. His compliance earned him the respect of Mad Dog and the other seniors. He began facing the wall and meditating, seeking inner calm and clarity amidst the turmoil from before. As he meditated, he recalled a plot twist from Ga Kyung's novels. His life mirrored the world of Shaolin Chronicles, yet unexpectedly aligned with characters from Return of the Demon Supreme. He knew that the novels he wrote shared the same world. On second thought, he thought that it was just the world that was the same. He knew that the protagonists from the novels were in the same period. However, they were active in different areas, so it would be unlikely for them to run into each other. In the second half of Return of the Demon Supreme, the protagonist of the Shaolin Chronicles appeared. That concluded that all of his novels were in a similar period. This prompted him to think that his actions might influence the events that took place in other novels. He started overthinking, saying, "Can my interference cause a butterfly effect? What if it gets in the way of other novels' protagonists' growth?" He decided that if he wished to get stronger, he would need to find the right place and connections. However, he couldn't remember anything other than the ones that would affect the growth of the other protagonists, because it had been 10 years since he read a novel. He only remembered the overarching stories, but his memories were still vague as he was unable to recall the exact details. He thought that if he stole those opportunities from the protagonists, the story development might be screwed up. He was worried that he might mess up Shaolin Chronicles and turn it into a cheap Chinese novel. He had already taken in Mukyun, who was supposed to become the blood monk. He must make sure that it works somehow, because the protagonist of Return of the Demon Supreme would gain enlightenment and become stronger in his fight with the blood monk. However, the blood monk had now disappeared, along with the enlightenment that he was supposed to gain, which happened because of our hero's mistake. He realized that he was in a messed up situation. He tried to think deeply about what to do next, however. There was no single idea that came to his mind. Meanwhile, Mad Dog was still lurking behind, as if he was a low-key pedophile. He stared at him intensely, carefully observing his posture and focused during meditation with a scrutinizing gaze. He assessed whether every breath was deliberate, every thought centered. Looks like he is focused on his repentance right now. He was captivated that a 12-year-old child was able to have that kind of concentration and repentant mindset. In addition, he also witnessed the special techniques and talents that he had shown. He knew for a fact that this child would become the pillar of Shaolin. A while ago, the whole leader blamed himself for what happened, however. Hyung took full accountability instead, saying that he failed to watch them. They focused on the matter, and the whole leader asked about the current status of the investigation. Hyung revealed that after interrogating everyone, their testimonies were the same. The truth had prevailed, and Mutai and his friends were found guilty because of the incident. It brought great shame to Shaolin, and the atmosphere in the Arhat Hall went bad. Not long after that, Mad Dog arrived. Mad Dog asked Hyung if he noticed the same thing as well, to which he replied that he did. They were able to find out easily that Mukyung was the one who beat up Mutai. Judging from the obvious wounds on his hands, they knew that Mujin just took the blame, wanting to protect his friend. In that confusing situation, the whole leader thought that they had both a disaster and a blessing appearing at the same time, but Mad Dog argued that it was more of a blessing finding the disaster and stopping it, because if it weren't for Mujin, there was no telling what else would have happened. The three eggheads sighed and contemplated the situation. Mad Dog then said that he would like to give his opinion about the incident, to which Hyen Sung allowed him to go ahead. Whole leader, I think this incident isn't due to any certain individual's fault, but rather is the fault of everyone. Mad Dog knew that it would be better not to blame anyone but to focus instead on making sure it wouldn't happen again. Hyen Sung got his point and asked if he had an idea in his mind. Mad Dog furiously yet passionately stated that he believed the root cause of the issue was a lack of proper training. He argued that more rigorous and disciplined training was essential to prevent such incidents in the future. The whole leader thought deeply about Mad Dog's masochistic proposal, but Mad Dog wanted to confirm if he was allowed to proceed with that. Hyen Sung stood up, saying he would leave the matter to him and Hyung, and he would be busy for a few days to wrap the matter up. Now that they knew the children were guilty, they must punish them accordingly. That's why he must go to the discipline court first. Mad Dog accepted and promised that he would do his best to guide the children, which he did as he was still observing our hero. Even though 2 hours had already passed, he was impressed that our hero hadn't moved in the slightest after 2 hours of meditating. He realized that there was no more point in monitoring him. Just by simply judging our hero's discipline, he left the scene using his movement art technique and promised that he would bring Mujin water and rice balls from time to time, so he doesn't need to worry and just focus on his meditation. Now back to our hero, who was close to being Buddha himself for cultivating for hours. He was glad that the creep had finally disappeared. He boasted that he was in the special forces for 7 years, and it wasn't for nothing. That was why he was able to sense that Mad Dog was nearby. He lay down, thinking about what he should do to kill time for his 7-day punishment. He was worried because he didn't have beans or mushrooms to give him the protein he needed for exercising. That was when he realized it had been ages since he last ate meat. He remembered that he ate fried chicken right before he got transmigrated to another world. He reminisced about the crispy skin that crunched with every bite, along with its tender meat that would make you forget your name. His stomach started growling, craving the taste of meat. He felt an intense hunger gnawing at him, making it hard to focus. He pondered where he could get meat, briefly considering if the monks would notice a missing chicken from the coop. He quickly stood up as he realized a brilliant idea. Since he was already in the forest, he decided he should go for a hunt. After all, it couldn't be that hard to catch a squirrel or two, right? We then get to see a glimpse of a little girl and a rabbit. both curiously eyeing our hero's hunting trap. However, the stupid rabbit still fell into the trap, and our hero couldn't help but chuckle at the unexpected success of his trap. The little girl immediately hid behind the tall grass, peeking out cautiously to see what would happen next. She watched as our hero approached the trap, wondering if he would notice her presence. Our hero shouted like a madman, exclaiming that protein had finally arrived. As a result, he instantly became a 0 out of 10 in the girl's eyes. His eyes started glowing, and his mouth began watering from the sight of the meat, like a carnivorous disco ball ready to party. The girl, however, patiently watched our hero's protein obsession. On the other side, in an area near Mount Songshan where the Shaolin Temple is, in a peaceful prefecture called Yucheon, the Shaolin disciples spread out in the area to gather information. They would talk to the people there and thus hear from them about what happened in the place. Shortly after, they all gathered at the entrance of the Sao Bull escort establishment. A monk named Haigul introduced himself. He is the vice hall leader of Shaolin Outer Hall. An escort was delighted that he was able to meet the esteemed monk. The escort introduced himself, and his name was Simon Piang. He was Mutai's father and the owner of Sao Bull establishment. He felt honored to meet a person known for his invincible fist. However, his smiling reaction disappeared when he saw his son. His son was barely recognizable from the bruises and injuries he received from Mu Kyung's previous attack. That angered Simon Piang a lot, and he demanded an answer as to why his son was trembling badly. However, the monk stood their ground. Haigul was determined to state the truth despite being against someone as powerful as Simon. He exclaimed that the reason for his son being in that state was due to his own wrongdoings, because rather than training his body and mind to be pure, he bullied his friends instead, causing conflict in the Shaolin Temple. Not only that, they also found out that there was an anomaly within the Yucheon prefecture. Hearing that made Simon panic, as his disgusting behavior was about to be revealed. It turns out that the Sao Bull escort establishment had been coercing money out of the people. Haigul was very frustrated. He couldn't believe that an outer sect that followed the Shaolin Temple would do such an evil deed. He immediately commanded everyone to take action so that these evildoers would never be able to use martial arts ever again. Panic arose in the prefecture. The escort commanded his private army to stop the monks in an instant, but the monks were determined to give justice. They knew that the outer sect deserved to be punished because they brought shame to the monastery. The fight between the bolds and the long hair was very intense. However, the less hair, the better you were in martial arts. In the end, the monks had successfully removed all of their martial arts, leaving not a single trace of their past skills or abilities. The second thing they must do was to take everything that the outer sect had taken unfairly from the common people and return it back to them. Meanwhile, Haiyung noticed that the citizens were panicking from the commotion. He realized that something had to be done quickly to restore order and calm the people, so he looked for Mr. Bang Jion, Mu Kyung's father. The man raised his hand and confirmed that he was the man they were looking for. He was shocked when he heard the news that his son was the one who got bullied. Haiyung did his best to apologize to the man. He took full responsibility for the bullying that his son had experienced and promised that it would never happen again. Still, the poor father couldn't believe that such a thing happened at the monastery. He thought that his son was in a place he could consider as safe. Once again, Haiyung apologized for not being able to stop it earlier. He knew that saying sorry wasn't enough, but he assured that the Shaolin Temple would take full responsibility. On that day, Haigul and the other Shaolin disciples helped Mutai's father transfer to work under other escort establishments affiliated with the Shaolin Temple as a porter. Meanwhile, our hero was still spending his days in the forest. He saw a sloppy trap set up ahead and couldn't help but feel confused because who the heck in the world would use a small branch to catch prey? He noticed that the trap was a little similar to the rabbit trap he made yesterday. However, there was a huge difference compared to his trap. This one was trash. But our hero was smart. He knew that there was a person trying to copy him, so there was another person on the mountain beside him. He quickly turned down upon hearing someone bustling in the bushes. He scanned the area carefully, knowing that the person behind the bush was the person who imitated him without copyright. He was shocked to see that it was just a starving little girl. Her clothes were too fancy for someone who was in the forest, and her eyes were wide with fear and hunger. The girl suddenly ran away, darting into the dense forest with surprising speed. He tried to chase her, but the girl was incredibly fast, weaving through the trees and underbrush with an agility that surprised him. The girl thought that she had finally disappeared from the hero's sight, her heart pounding in her chest as she glanced down, convinced she had lost him. But our hero was faster than he thought. She never expected that he was already ahead of her. Our hero reached out his hand, not letting the girl escape. Her wide eyes were filled with fear and confusion. He was a stranger on the floor, and he was thankful that the FBI organization hadn't formed yet during this year. The girl immediately apologized, her voice trembling with sincerity and regret. But our hero was more confused about why a pretty young girl was wandering in the forest. Our hero apologized for startling the girl and offered her some food instead. The little girl delightfully accepted his proposal, enjoying every bit of the meat. Mugen started acting cunningly, remarking that she must be hungry and jokingly boasting that she tried to copy his trap. She confirmed that she indeed copied him. However, she asked, "You are a monk, aren't you? Not allowed to eat meat?" The atmosphere got awkward, so Mugen stated that he had his own circumstances and that she didn't need to mind the minor details. Mugen then asked, "Why are you so deep in the mountain?" He added that the place was under the Shaolin Temple, but judging from her clothes, she seemed like she was from the outside. The little girl lost her appetite after hearing our hero's answer. She glanced away, uncertain how to respond to his question. It turns out that her father left her, leaving her wandering in the dense mountain forest. Our hero realized that she had her own circumstances and decided not to ask about them. He gently changed the topic. "By the way, can you please keep my rabbit hunting a secret?" The little girl innocently asked for his reason. "Is it because you couldn't be caught eating meat?" Mugen stated that there was another reason besides that. Our hero proposed that if she kept it a secret, she would help her return home. In exchange, he told her that an influential shirtless monk would come and be able to help her easily. The little girl was skeptical. She asked, "How did you know that he's coming?" Our hero smiled and said, "Because I can feel his presence." He told her that he just needed to wait at the entrance of the cave, and the shirtless dude would arrive. While Mad Dog was about to check on our hero, the little girl asked for his help. She stated that she got separated from her group and lost her way. Of course, Mad Dog would always be willing to help, but he realized that there was something he needed to do first. He asked the little girl if she perhaps saw a boy inside the cave. Our hero suddenly got chills as they talked about him, which made the little girl chuckle. She was able to realize why Mugen asked her to keep it a secret that they met. She covered for him, saying that she did not approach the cave because she was scared. Mad Dog bought the cover. He stated that he knew Mugen wouldn't disappoint him. Knowing that he was doing well, he decided to go back down along with the girl. He smiled at the girl and said that he would bring her back home. Mad Dog asked for her name, and she revealed that her name was Rusilwa. Meanwhile, our hero was glad that the rule-abiding monk had finally disappeared. He lay down and realized that he had forgotten to ask the girl's name, but since it was none of his business, he brushed it off. Later, at the temple, Mad Dog asked for Mukyung's attention. Mad Dog wanted to inform him about something and involved his father too. Mad Dog revealed everything that happened in Yucheon Prefecture, the fact that the Seo Bull escort establishment, which was run by Mutai's parents who bullied him, had completely closed down. In addition, they introduced his father to a new workplace. Mad Dog told him that he didn't need to worry anymore. He should instead focus on becoming a true disciple of the Shaolin. Instead, Mukyung started trembling and cried profusely, Feeling a sense of relief that everything was finally settled, he told Mad Dog that he would do his very best. Mad Dog patted his egg-shaped head while Mukyung told him his promise. It was all thanks to Mujin, who reminded him that the Shaolin Temple would never abandon a disciple. On the fourth day, our hero was glad that the survival training he received from Special Forces paid off, helping him to hunt easily. But there was one thing that he didn't think of. When he cooked the meat for the little girl, he realized that he cooked the meat with an open fire, allowing Mad Dog to almost catch him. So, in order to leave as few traces as possible, he decided to cook in nearby caves instead. He wanted to make sure that he left as little evidence as possible since he wouldn't have enough time to clear up all the mess and pluck out the rabbit's fur. He decided to cover it in mud, cook it, and then pluck out the fur along with the mud. Although it wasn't perfect, he would be able to get his protein that way. It was also his first time eating meat after coming to the Shaolin Temple, so he felt much relief from it. The fifth day had arrived. He decided to get up earlier than the bells striking the Shaolin Temple to face the world in a lotus position. But that was not for the sake of training hard in meditation. It was because of the presence of a certain someone who regularly checks the cave. Mad Dog was amazed. He thought that he was already hardworking, but to think that our hero would meditate early in the morning was impressive. He slowly approached, trying his best not to break his concentration. He took the empty water container to change it into a refilled one. He was thoroughly impressed that our hero hadn't noticed him. He thought that Mujin was too focused for him to even notice. He handed him the bag of rations, ensuring he had enough food to sustain him until he reached the seventh day. Before taking the food, Mujin made sure that everything was all clear. He looked at the volume of the ration and couldn't believe that they expected a young kid to survive on something like this for a week. He found the punishment too harsh. He decided to eat the grain ball and drink the water that was given once a day. He also made up for the energy that he lacked during his hunt. At this point, we could say that hunting became a routine of his. On the sixth day, our hero proceeded with his workout routine in order to use the protein and energy he had consumed. But before doing so, he made sure that his body was warmed up as much as possible. As he kept moving his body, he realized something. The breathing method used while exercising was similar to the energy circulation technique. So he tried his best to challenge himself by combining the enlightenment cultivation technique and exercises to start his own kind of training. The result was that his body was feeling more refreshed than ever before. By this time, he didn't know that this process was the training process of the energy accumulation art. The final day had arrived. Mad Dog arrived early in the morning, stating that his wall-facing meditation had ended, allowing him to finally get up. "I see, so may I speak now?" Mad Dog told him that he was now allowed to speak. He also added that he would be participating in today's morning training. While walking in the mountains, Mujin asked about how the incident had been handled. Mad Dog replied that after they investigated the Tai's family, they found out that their establishment had been committing numerous atrocious deeds in the village, so they destroyed the martial arts of everyone in that place and shut them down. He also added that they introduced Mukyung's father to a new workplace. In the middle of their conversation, Mad Dog said that they increased the intensity of the training regimen. "So far, I allowed you to train in your own way because of what I promised you, but to be fair to the rest, you'll need to follow the training of the Shaolin Temple now." Mujin frowned, expressing his frustration that they were still embroiled in their bizarre exercise odyssey. Our hero asked if he could simply increase the intensity of his own training regimen instead, but Mad Dog asked him to try the Shaolin way first. At the training hall, he was greeted with smiles by his friends, whose warm welcome made our hero feel like he belonged. They told him that the training had become really tiring lately, however. Seeing him again made them feel refreshed. Mukyung kindly informed him that he almost gave up. On the other hand, Mugging boasted that something like that was a basic thing to do. Hayung then arrived, telling everyone that training was about to start. He asked them to get in their positions as quickly as they could. The seniors brought a bag of sand pouches and gave each monk the required amount. The monks were feeling skeptical about whether to wear it or not. They knew that these sand pouches would serve as extra weight, which was why the training had gotten tougher. Ha-young then announced that they would proceed with the horse dance. Every monk was struggling, and even though Mujin had returned, the training did not stop. As the training got tougher, everyone started sweating profusely. However, our favorite gym rat was happier to do so. He could finally smash his PR by using the sand pouches as free weights. Although he didn't like the grip and weight distribution of the sand pouches, he gladly used them for the sake of gains because he knew that he wouldn't be training as a bodybuilder at this age. It was the perfect opportunity to use it to increase his strength instead. The senior monks immediately noticed that he was yet again doing an exercise they had never seen before. They started calling him dense for not reading the situation. On the training grounds, Mad Dog then arrived, pissed that our hero had turned the Shaolin training into a circus show. The seniors were thrilled that Mujin was about to be reprimanded by Mad Dog. Mad Dog's frustration was evident. He gritted his teeth hard, and veins had started popping out on his face. But then he noticed that our hero was sweating more than the others. It prompted him to think that our hero's regimen might be tougher training than his. But that wasn't the main point because he started feeling a sharp sense of energy around him. He wondered if our hero had already known about the energy accumulation art. Energy accumulation art is an energy circulation technique that can only be done once one has successfully accumulated energy in their body and has gotten used to the energy to a certain degree. This art allows the user to break out of the norms of a physique and display superhuman strength. The boulder-breaking demonstration that Monk Ha-young showed previously belongs under this category. It is also possible to use it to do things like flying in the sky or moving at extremely fast speeds. However, not everyone can attain this. It is something that can only be attained after an epiphany of energy has been achieved after numerous trials and errors. That was how it was supposed to be, but Mad Dog was shocked by what he was witnessing. Meanwhile, our hero was still performing this weird exercise. He stated that he was getting tired of bodyweight exercises. He was glad that he got these freedom bells. He started chasing the pump like Arnold Schwarzenegger, with each repetition that he did on triceps overhead extensions. The early morning training, which involved sand pouches, was hell for everyone except for Mujin. He proceeded to pump up his shoulders, aiming for that 3D boulder look by doing lateral raises with a face full of ecstasy. He enjoyed every second of the training. On the other hand, the other young monks were surprised by his weird posture and began to stare at him. But Mad Dog looked at Mujin in a slightly different light. Judging from what he was witnessing, our hero's regimen was working. He wondered how he managed to use the accumulation of energy art at such a young age. Mad Dog interrupted Mujin, asking to give him a second. He told him to follow and insisted they have a private talk because he wanted to ask him about something. He brought him to Ha-young, who stood there in disbelief. He was also deeply shocked by the event because the auras emanating from our hero were a result of his energy accumulation art. He said to himself that it was probably the result of the wall meditation training, but he was worried that if he told them that, he would basically be admitting that he was doing other stuff and not serving his punishment, so he brushed it off, saying that he was just testing things out. He told them that his family had emphasized a lot of breathing techniques, and it seemed that he got excited about today's exercise. He added that his family's breathing techniques were similar to the energy circulation technique, so he applied the same principles. The eyes of the two widened in shock, their expressions frozen in disbelief at what they had just witnessed, like they'd seen a monk with long hair for the first time. Ha-young knew that energy accumulation art should only be possible after the basic enlightenment cultivation had been mastered. Although that technique was only a basic technique, it would still take a few years for someone to master it. Among those who mastered it, only a few were able to effectively use the energy accumulation art, a technique requiring profound skill and deep understanding. The required process is for everyone to build a foundation first using the enlightenment cultivation technique, then go to the next level compared to accumulating energy with the energy accumulation art after they've mastered the enlightenment cultivation technique. But if someone's able to attain the energy accumulation art after learning the enlightenment like Murim, they'll be able to accumulate energy faster than their peers. If they learn the next level's cultivation technique on top of that, then their prowess will increase by folds. Hayoung tried his best not to grin seeing such a genius of a monk. He knew that our hero would be able to learn the higher cultivation techniques quickly. Their eyes were filled with hidden intentions behind those cheerful smiles, particularly Hayoung, who approached him in an oddly curious manner. However, their expectations disappeared when our hero told them that he could only do it if he was using his family's breathing technique. The sight left the two bald heads stunned and disappointed. However, it also gave them a sense of relief that Murim was still just a kid after all. Our hero's pump was slowly disappearing, so he asked if he could leave the scene. The two realized that they had gotten greedy for expecting too much from a 12-year-old child. After the training, Muyul asked Mukyung to do the thing they always did. Again, he noticed that they were doing the muscle lengthening technique that he taught to Muyul, and Mukyung revealed that they were doing this consistently after training. When our hero received his punishment, both Mugung and Mukyung were interested in doing it, so Muyul taught them. Mukyung scratched his shiny head, saying that his body had started feeling better since he did the muscle lengthening technique. He was surprised to see that Muyul had started teaching others. He didn't think about him since he wasn't mentioned in the novel, but on second thought, he thought that Muyul was pretty good with his body. He wondered if the reason he wasn't able to become a martial master was because he was an idiot despite being talented. Meanwhile, we see Mugung looking gloomy. Our hero asked if he would also do the muscle lengthening technique. Muyul revealed that Mugung was unable to do so due to his stiff body. His face flushed like a ripe tomato, saying, "That's right, my body is stiff." Our hero sighed, saying that having a stiff body doesn't matter because that was precisely what the technique was used for. He didn't want to make fun of him because everyone was a beginner at some point. That statement made Mugung reminisce about his past. Everyone in the monastery was amazed by his amazing frame to the point where they wished they had a family like him. They assumed that since he came from a good family, he must be talented, giving him the motivation to push harder so everyone could look up to him. He also scratched his shiny head and said that he didn't expect our hero to say the right thing, that one must not make fun of those who work hard. With that, our hero offered that they must proceed to a muscle lengthening session. Mugung grimaced slightly as he did his best to endure the intense stretching session. On closer look, Murim noticed that Mukyung's body was also stiff, but not as stiff as Mugung's. He then looked forward to seeing Muyul's stretches, knowing that he was the one who taught the two. The four of them stood in a line and did a side bend exercise together, stretching their bodies sideways in unison. Mugung immediately received a nagging from our hero. Later on, they proceeded to do breathing exercises. He informed them that this one would be easier compared to before. Mugung knew that Muyul also possessed great physical prowess since he was hanging out with our hero from the start. In fact, even Murim was shocked to see that Muyul could do a split. Murim, who was among the strongest monks in their age group, found Muyul a little stupid, but very talented, and Mukyung, who easily beat up Mutai. Mugung knew that he was surrounded by monsters. However, he would be working hard so he wouldn't lose out. For him, he wanted to become the strongest. It looks like the future of Shin is in good hands. Days passed, and thanks to the addition of sand pouches into the dawn training, our hero enjoyed his time doing various free weight exercises. "I can feel that my muscle is pumping," he said. During his free time, he practiced energy accumulation. He managed to accumulate more energy through energy breathing and was able to grow stronger. He would also stretch with his friends between training sessions, an activity he thoroughly enjoyed. "Keep your back straight. Don't lean forward while doing those sessions, he reminded them. He couldn't escape the glances of his seniors. Their eyes seemed to follow his every movement, and they couldn't help but notice how his body was getting swole. As the days went by, his shoulders, especially, had broadened and become more defined, a testament to his intense exercises. They wondered if his impressive gains were due to the special method he was training along with his friends. After 10 days had passed, a change occurred for the training sessions. From now on, each monk would begin to focus on learning the inner energy cultivation technique. As most of them had already mastered the enlightenment cultivation technique, this new phase in their training promised to unlock even greater potential within them. Ha-young brought out his favorite students to demonstrate the feat to the young bucks. These were the very students who tried to gaslight Mujin after beating Mugging. The first move is the core punch. This is done by starting circulating energy and then pulling the accumulated energy in the core to go past the energy C point, the gastric cavity point, and the palace point. After those complicated Shaolin yaps, 70% of the energy will go by their right arm, pass by the breath vessel point, and then head to the shoulder bone point. The remaining 30% will go to the left arm. Our hero tried his best to apply those complicated techniques. He focused intently, accumulating all of his energy and transferring it deep within his core. The process requires good concentration, but such a feat is nothing for a gym rat. He then split the energy in a 7:3 ratio, carefully directing the larger portion to the right arm and the remaining to his left. After that, he took his stance, ready to execute the chain punch. With a deep breath, he initiated the chain punch, and it created a spark-like eruption of energy. He was shocked by the result. Although it wasn't enough to break a boulder, the difference was substantial compared to his previous attempts. He knew immediately that the concept behind his breakthrough lay in the way a portion of his energy was being strengthened. As his acupoints were stimulated by his own energy, he understood that distributing the energy instead of channeling it all into one arm was to maintain his balance by dispersing the energy throughout his body. He ensured that his movements remained stable and controlled. However, he realized that as his energy continued to grow, this method might pose challenges, particularly for his left arm. He thought that he also needed to channel energy to other areas, such as his legs, to execute the chain punch properly without losing balance. He overheard Senior Ha-young advising the other young monks to transfer energy to their legs as well, which confirmed his deduction. This confirmation from Ha-young motivated him further to master the technique. He started spreading his energy across his legs as well, aiming to control his body as a whole. This approach allowed him to maintain a solid stance and foundation for his chain punch, but his experience wasn't enough to let him fully master the technique. He realized that the feat was harder than he had initially expected. He wondered how much training he would need to execute such a complicated step effectively in a real fight. Still, he was determined to face the challenge head-on. He was driven by a strong desire to gain the same power and mastery as the protagonists from the novels he had read before. But then he saw his best friend Mule performing some random dance moves as if he were engaging in a ritual dance to summon a legendary dragon. He knew for a fact that Mule would find the process complicated, as even he struggled with the daunting task of spreading his energy. But the vibe Mule was giving was the same as middle-aged white women doing anything except a normal workout. Mule's actions were enough to make him facepalm and say, "This guy is screwed." Concerned, he approached Mule in a calm and composed manner, trying to understand what was going on. Mule looked up with a sheepish grin and admitted, "I can't remember what we were told to do." Our hero tried his best to be mature and asked, "Can you tell me what you can't remember?" He instantly regretted asking when it turned out that this egghead had everything upside down. Rather than starting from the energy C, the palace point, and then to the gastric cavity point, he stated, "I think it goes from the energy core to the great palace and then to the gastric point." Even when it came to something as basic as the 70-30 energy distribution, he managed to get it entirely wrong. His understanding was so flawed that it became evident he had an attention span of a tick-tock. Muyul was deeply embarrassed by such a glaring mistake, especially after our hero took the time to correct him. Our hero, on the other hand, had an internal monologue, so that's why he was never mentioned in the novel. Despite being talented, he's too dumb. Our hero tried his best to explain the technique as simply as possible. He advised Muyul not to worry about the acupoints and instead focus on where he was pointing his finger. He pointed to his abdomen and asked if he could gather it there. Then he advised it to move swiftly yet smoothly until it reached his shoulder. Immediately, Muyul managed to do it thanks to our hero's simplified energy accumulation technique for dummies. He sighed with relief, realizing that teaching his best friend wasn't so difficult after all, as long as he explained everything at a lower pace. But Muyul quickly forgot everything he had been taught. Our hero sighed once more, this time with a mix of frustration and resignation. If only he could punch a kid without consequence, he would do it. This kid has the brain of a goldfish. During those tough days, our hero learned the chain punch technique. For days, Hayoung and the second-class disciples would teach one new step each day. Since it is a foundational martial art, there aren't a lot of moves to follow, and they were able to teach everything within 10 days. After that, everyone was trained separately based on how fast their progress went. It was rigorous and intense, however. Each young monk was determined to become stronger now. In the present, 71 days had passed. Mujin, Mugang, Mukyung, and even Muyul were training diligently. They managed to successfully learn the 10 moves of the chain punch, however. The feat wasn't easy. Mugang, who was sweating profusely, told our hero that 20 seconds had passed when our hero stood up. We were treated to a glimpse of his impressive, well-defined back. Those muscles were a testament to his hard work and discipline for the last few days. Our hero smiled at Mugging and suggested they move on to their next training session. Nothing beats a good old squat, he said, eager to shift the focus to the fundamentals of Shaolin. During the dawn training session, Instructor Mad Dog was visibly impressed that none of the young trainees had given up. All of them were pushing themselves hard and remained committed to learning Shaolin. But then he noticed that one of the disciples was breathing loudly with each repetition. Intrigued, he looked closer at the training and was shocked by what he saw. It was none other than our hero, who had stacked a substantial number of sandbags onto his squats. His efforts and intensity and his workout were so impressive that even the relentless instructor Mad Dog was taken aback. What in the world? He couldn't help but wonder how many sandbags our hero was carrying, and to achieve such a feat at such a young age was nothing short of remarkable. He was thoroughly impressed by how huge Mujin's muscles were. The size, definition, and vascularity of his physique were top-notch. If you put him beside any monks of his generation, it was very noticeable that he would mark them. The wittiness of his back alone was enough to set him apart from others. He achieved all that by his own strength in just 2 months. Was he really right all along? He reminisced about all the times he had spent with Mujin, from warning him about the drawbacks of his squat variation to helping him return to the temple after he had been punished. He wondered if the Shaolin Temple had been wrong all along and if this kid wasn't just spouting nonsense. The whole leader arrived, snapping him back to reality. He was asked why he was still on the training ground when the session had already ended. Mad Dog immediately stood up to show his respect to the whole leader, but the whole leader interrupted his apology, clearly more concerned about his well-being and the reasons behind his lingering on the training ground. He was advised that sometimes a man should speak out his worries, as doing so often reveals that they weren't as it seemed. Hyan Sun offered to lend an ear, suggesting that sharing his concerns might help put things into perspective and ease his mind. Mad Dog frowned, uncertain whether he should confide in the whole leader. He took a deep breath and began to explain all of his concerns about Mujin. After lunch, our hero was taken aback when he received a summons from the head of the Arhat Hall. But Mad Dog insisted that he should go because it was a very important discussion. Meanwhile, His less than supportive friends were laughing and expressing concern about him at the same time. Just admit that you're wrong this time, okay? Mad Dog hurried him along, emphasizing that the whole leader was waiting. Even though he was skeptical, he had no choice but to comply. Our hero was overwhelmed with anxiety, overthinking every possibility. He feared that he might have inadvertently caused more trouble without knowing. He couldn't help but wonder why someone as important as the whole leader would summon a kid like him. The whole leader was also surprised. Although he already knew that he was talented and a little eccentric, along with the unique training techniques that he did, he wouldn't expect that even Mad Dog would pay so much attention to him. Back then, he suggested to Mad Dog that he needed to talk to Murim personally because the solution to his question could only be answered if he was able to see him in person. Now, at the very moment, he was facing the notorious kid known for his latent talent. He observed our hero carefully, taking in every detail of him, from physique to minor details. Meanwhile, our hero was filled with anxiety, wondering, why did he summon me so suddenly? It had been a few minutes, and the whole leader continued to observe him silently, doing nothing. Bro, we having a staring contest. But then he noticed that Hyen Sung was glancing at different parts of his body, uncertain whether the whole leader was impressed by his new physique or if there was another reason for the scrutiny. Our hero began doing a bodybuilder side chest pose in front of the respected whole leader. The whole leader was both impressed and somewhat disgusted. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone a mixture of astonishment and disapproval. Our hero tried his best to brush it off, saying that he just wanted to stand in a different position. Having a meeting with Murim once again made him reminisce about the first time he was summoned, which had not been for a good reason. So our hero asked whether he was summoned once again because of the same incident. But the whole leader assured him that the reason was different. He explained that the purpose of the summons was to confirm something with his own eyes. This revelation made our hero even more anxious than before. The whole leader told him that after careful observation, he knew for sure that something had changed. Changes? What do you mean? The most obvious one was that his body had grown much faster than any of his peers who had joined the Shaolin Temple. However, that wasn't the reason for his summons. He wanted to ask Murim whether it was true that the reason for his eye-catching growth was due to his family's training method that he had been doing. Our hero had a sour expression, knowing he was about to receive a long lecture from the old man. This BS again? So, he took the courage to ask whether he was asking to find out whether his training was indeed better or not. But contrary to his expectations, Hyen Sung told him that he wouldn't lecture him, as the Shaolin Temple isn't close-minded. In fact, he wanted to make a proposal to our young man. Murim was confused. He thought that this old man was finally losing it. For all of the days he spent training under the temple's care, he received nothing but criticism from the seniors. The whole leader revealed that the reason the Shaolin Temple had been able to last for 1,000 years was that they had maintained a mindset to fix their shortcomings and take in what was good for everyone. There were times that they must be gentle, but there were also times that they must be tough. In other words, if our hero's training regimen was indeed good, then he would consider it. That statement left our hero in shock. He wouldn't expect this time would finally be alive, and what's making it more shocking is that the whole leader was the one who gave him a chance out of all people. "Did I hear that wrong? This old man will accept my training method," he uttered, his voice filled with disbelief. Our hero reminded himself of the person in front of him, Hyen Sung, our whole leader. Before becoming a martial artist, Hyen Sung had practiced aestheticism in pursuit of becoming a Buddha. He knew that receiving approval from someone with such a profound background would be a monumental decision, marking a significant validation of his training methods. To include Murim's training would simply be a training that everyone was uncertain of. But now he was given an opportunity to be in charge of the younger monk's training. If things went wrong, Hyun-sung might receive unthinkable punishments. Despite that, he still decided to take the gamble so Shaolin Temple could become stronger. He believed that if Mujin's training proved effective, it could become a pillar of the Shaolin Temple's 1,000-year history, potentially making it stronger than ever before. Much to everyone's surprise, our hero found the task a hassle. "Why would I do that?" he asked, his tone reflecting his reluctance and frustration with the idea. Hyun-sung couldn't believe that he was receiving such a rejection. Our hero had been fighting for his own way of martial arts for months, yet, now faced with a significant opportunity, he seemed unwilling to do it. "What do you mean you refuse?" he exclaimed. Our hero argued that there were 70 new monks he would need to teach, and it might hinder his own training. Additionally, since the incident from before, he had been cast out by his peers and treated as if he were insane. Given this reception, he felt that no one in the temple would follow a lunatic like him. However, that wasn't all. Mujin also thought that he wouldn't receive any benefit from teaching those ungrateful monks. "I had nothing to gain and a lot to lose. Besides, it's not that helping others would help me reach the ending faster," he said. He expected that teaching those rascals would only complicate matters further, so he didn't want to waste his precious time and effort for nothing. But for the old man's sake, our hero tried his best to be understanding. He said he would take on the task, but he had one condition. Fast forward to the night, when the moon was full and the stars were shining brightly in the clear sky. The young bucks were sleeping soundlessly, unaware of what lay ahead. Our hero inhaled deeply, preparing to make the loudest shout he could muster to wake the monks from their slumber. With a forceful exhale, he unleashed a powerful call that echoed through the quiet night. Everyone was confused and startled. They knew it was still dark and wondered why practice had already begun, even though they hadn't heard the bell yet. The abrupt wake-up call of our hero left them disoriented. The early and unexpected summons had jolted them into action, and they hurried to the training ground to find out what was happening and why their training had commenced early at night. There, they were in shock to see the person behind the unexpected disturbance. Their eyes widened in disbelief as they recognized our hero, who stood ready to begin the training session. What was even more shocking was that Mujin was standing next to Hyung and Mad Dog, individuals they held in the highest regard and considered masters of martial arts. Hyung revealed that the reason for waking them up earlier than usual was that they would be adding some training to warm up their bodies before the dawn training. Additionally, our hero would be overlooking the daily dawn training from now on, so they must do their best to listen to him and follow his instructions. Most of the monks started laughing, however. Mujin had already expected that he would not receive a great reaction. He knew it was inevitable for tongues to wag if a peer who had a lousy reputation was suddenly put in charge of training. However, now that he was in charge of this, he wouldn't let them underestimate him any more. He took a deep breath, asking everyone to keep quiet. His commanding voice echoed around the temple, honed by his military experience. It was made clear that our hero wasn't joking. With a commanding presence that even Mad Dog was left in awe, he stated that from today forward, he would be teaching the training methods of his family during the dawn training. During the training, he advised everyone not to treat him as a new monk like them. Instead, he wanted to be called instructor. His demand for respect and recognition was foreseeable. That made Hyung even more impressed. Who would have expected that, besides his talent and shiny head, Mujin also possessed the traits of a leader? Judging by the look in Mujin's eyes, it was clear that he was not here to mess around. His determination and willingness to become an instructor were palpable, reflecting a serious commitment to his role and a readiness to lead with authority and purpose. Meanwhile, Mugung noticed that the other monks behind him were laughing at our hero. Their mocking laughter and whispered insults angered him because he knew Mujin was the real deal. Our hero wouldn't allow such disrespect. He gritted his teeth. his resolve hardening as he prepared to address the mockery and defend his position. He looked at them and asked, "Why are you laughing? Do you think this is a joke?" His voice was sharp and demanding. That statement struck fear into the young monks. They were visibly intimidated, and their laughter faded as they realized the seriousness and commitment of our hero. To finish their skepticism, he asked anyone who had issues with him being their instructor to step forward. He also included the two who had laughed earlier, making it clear that he would put a stop to their doubts and disrespect. Of course, the young monks seized the opportunity to step forward, eager to voice their objections and challenge his authority, for young monks had cornered him, but he stood tall, unwavering in the face of their challenge. His posture and demeanor exuded confidence and resilience, making it clear that he was prepared to address their concerns by finishing them all in the sparring. As soon as the sparring started, the monks rushed forward, their intentions clear as they closed in on him. However, their attempt backfired. Our hero ducked swiftly, causing the monks to collide with each other. They forgot to turn off the friendly fire before the sparring started. One of the monks began to panic, realizing that Murim was nowhere to be found. Anxiety gripped him as he feared that Murim might reappear unexpectedly. We then see our hero in a cool, relaxed sitting posture, exuding confidence. He claimed that he had bulked up so much that there was no way he would lose. He moved swiftly, getting behind one of the monks. His quick and precise action caught the monk off guard. He immediately tried to choke the monk out by performing his iconic rear naked choke. The monk immediately called for reinforcement, realizing that he was in a tight spot. This marks the conclusion of the second part of this manhwa. To show your support for the channel and help speed up the release of recaps for your favorite manhwa, please consider subscribing to the channel. Looking forward to seeing you in the next video.